Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, November 7th, 2024. I'm James Spencer. Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about home brewing. This week, 4 professional brewers answer some of your questions and give their experience and advice on the topic of going pro. In today's world of craft brewing, where lots of things are changing all the time, if you still want to take the leap into professional brewing, what are some things to look out for, and what are some strategies that work? If you want to support us financially, check out patreon.com/basicbrewing, and thanks to everybody who's helping out in that way. If you go to patreon.com/basicbrewing, you can see a long list of stuff that you can access if you sign up as a supporter. And many thanks to the new Patreon subscribers who are signing up every week. Your help is very much appreciated. It's now November, and Patreon says Apple is going to start taking a big chunk of the new Patreon subscriptions that are initiated in the iPhone Patreon app. It doesn't affect current subscribers. So if you're thinking about subscribing to podcasts, well, like ours, and you have an iPhone Patreon app, instead go to the Patreon website to subscribe. Then you can use the iPhone app to look at all the wonderful stuff that you have access to. Again, I'm talking to you from the past. I pre-recorded last week. I'm also recording this week a few days ahead. An update on the Mash Your Luck Dark World Beer. I went to Hot Springs this past week to take care of some family matters and to meet with 4 other good friends that I haven't seen together in about 41 years. One came all the way from Rome, and one rode his motorcycle to Arkansas from San Diego. He's crazy. I brought a bottle of the big dark beer, and we shared it. It wasn't carbonated yet, but I'm very hopeful that it'll be worth all the effort of brewing in the end. It's 13% alcohol, so, you drink enough of it, you won't care. My friend Kelly at that gathering noted that it would probably be the last time that we all get together in that group. Way to bring up the mood, Kelly. All right. We got to spend time at Superior Bathhouse Brewing in Hot Springs, and our friend Rose Schweikart, the owner, whom you've heard on this show, joined us on the sunny lawn by the brewery. It's a beautiful day with delicious beers. Rose shared a delicious unreleased Saison that at that time was not among the 16 taps of Superior beer on offer. It will be soon. It might be by the time you hear this. One of the other taps might have gone empty, and so that beer might be on tap. Rose also told us about the beers that she's planning for a holiday-themed flight that's coming up soon. So really looking forward to tasting that when we go back for the holidays. I'm also looking forward to brewing a Belgian-style beer as the weather cools. Our friends and sponsors at Imperial Yeast are bringing back B45 Gnome as the winter seasonal. B45 Gnome was specifically selected for brewing Belgian-style ales with remarkable clarity and classic Belgian flavor profiles. Gnome offers a balanced flavor profile, malt and hop harmony, high flocculation, and versatility. It's because it's suitable for various Belgian beer styles, from light hoppy to dark and malty. B45 Gnome is out there now until early January while supplies last. You know we love Imperial Yeast with 200 billion cells in each easy-to-open pouch. My stir plate is dusty because I don't use it anymore to make starters for moderate gravity 5-gallon batches. And my airlocks are usually bubbling before bedtime. Ask your local homebrew store about Imperial B45 Gnome while you can, and find all the dependable deliciousness at imperialyeast.com. It's imperialyeast.com. Okay, Matt Giovanisi from Brew Cabin joins me in this conversation to help out asking questions to 4 professional brewers who you'll also recognize from this show. Sean Terrell from 2 Mile Brewing, Josh Secor from Gambit Brewing, Adam Ross from Twin Span Brewing, and Mike Tonsmeyer, the mad fermentationist from Sapwood Cellars. I was really honored that everyone made time for the conversation, and I think we covered a lot of interesting and useful ground for those who are thinking about going pro. Well, this is an honor to be joined by 4 professional brewers and an almost professional brewer in this conversation. I appreciate you guys taking so much time to have this conversation, because I think it's an important one. I think it's going to be a fun one. I'm going to start by introducing you, Sean Terrell. This is your fault. This is your idea that we're all getting together. So first of all, I'm going to have each of you go around the horn and kind of introduce yourselves and talk for just a little bit about your brewery. Kind of give us the elevator pitch. Sean?
Sure. I am the co-owner and brewer and everything else at 2 Mile Brewing in Leadville, Colorado. We have the distinction or reputation, perhaps, of being the highest brewery in the Western Hemisphere, I think it is. We're constantly trying to define that gray area. Highest brewery in the United States, for sure. Anyway, in Leadville, Colorado. We're a 7-barrel brewery. I'm on paper, we're a brew pub. I hesitate to call us that because there's so little focus on the food, and I know that's something we're going to get into today. But we're about a 70-seat indoor and out restaurant brewery in a terrific location. We see majority tourist traffic. I know we're going to get into that too. And been doing this for just over 4 years, closing in on 5. Since 3 days before COVID, and plugging away at it ever since.
Let's go from west to east. I think I got my geography right. Adam Ross from Twinspan Brewing.
Yeah, we have been open for about 4.5 years. We actually, our original open date was the date the government declared it a pandemic, like a national emergency. We are a brew pub as well. We have quite a few breweries in the area, considering the size of our metro area. And so when we opened, we really actually wanted to geek out and focus on the food just as much as the beer. So that's kind of our shtick is really that beer and food pairing, and maybe more eclectic styles, playing around with some stuff the other breweries aren't playing around with. We are 15-barrel system, which is pretty big for us. We just recently started getting into heavy into distributing cans. But yeah, our thing is beer and food pairing with not afraid to try some of the more esoteric styles out there.
Josh Secor from Gambit Brewing in St. Paul, Minnesota.
Yeah, so Gambit is we're a 5-barrel brew house in downtown St. Paul, the Lower Town neighborhood. We have been around for just going on 2 years. It'll be 2 years in January of being officially open. And we do a pretty wide variety of stuff, almost like the older brew pub model. Our neighborhood is highly residential, so I'm trying to keep a wide variety of stuff for a wide variety of people.
And finally, the gentleman that's been with us the longest in this conversation, almost 2 decades, who runs Sapwood Cellars along with his business partner, Scott Janish, Mike Tonsmeyer, the Mad Fermentationist.
Yeah, thanks. Always great to be on, James. I'm surprised that I'm the long-standing one here. So we've been open for about 6 years. We were lucky enough to open up about 1.5 years before COVID, sort of build up a local following before everything changed. But we're finally adding food in the next couple of months. Our longtime taproom manager is taking on the GM role, and we're hiring a chef, and Scott's dealing with the build out and all that. But we're a 10-barrel system. We're right between sort of DC and Baltimore in the back of an industrial park. And so we really have to be a destination, sort of whatever we do, whether it's the food, whether it's the trivia, whether it's the sort of big, wide, weird range of beers we do, from barrel-aged sour stuff to hazies to the sticky stouts to the smoothie sours. We really just try not to get vetoed. If there's a whole group coming, we make a cider, we make a light lager, we make just something that everyone would be okay with, even if it maybe isn't their first choice.
And then Matt Giovanisi is joining us from Colorado. Matt, you're not pro, but you got enough gear to go pro, I think, on a nano scale, maybe. Have you? You're here to join me to give kind of the homebrew, help me, give the home brewer perspective and ask questions from those of us who are not on the pro side yet. Have you ever been curious? Have you ever been tempted to go professional?
Definitely not tempted, but curious in general, because as I'm a business owner, and so but not in the brewing space. So I'm just interested in the business aspects of a brewery, just out of morbid curiosity, more than actually wanting to start my own thing.
And Sean, you this was your idea to get together. I think I blew it out bigger than you initially thought about the idea. But what was your concept in starting this conversation?
Well, I think and I'm very happy to have these probably more qualified gentlemen joining us. I think the initial concept was it's been quite a while. I've been listening to the show since episode 1, since we've really talked about home brewing. And, it gets tangentially mentioned when we get to speak, which is infrequently, unfortunately. But I think there have to be a lot of people out there who are still curious. Maybe these aren't the halcyon days of the 90s and early 2000s when any home brewer with a fistful of dollars and a dream could think that there was a market to be plumbed. But certainly I feel personally that there's still a market out there for people who are passionate about beer and want to go professional with it. And I don't think that's been addressed for quite a while.
Adam?
Yeah, I just want to add to that I feel like everyone who picks up a guitar or musical instrument dreams about being in a band and being a rock star. And then everyone who picks up a mash paddle at some point thinks, I could do this professionally. And I certainly feel like I'm still a home brewer playing with really big toys. So to say that one of us is more qualified than the other, I don't know. For me, I still feel like I'm a home brewer just going on a really big batch size.
Matt?
What are the relationships between a rock star and a pro brewer? Because I see both of you have guitars in the background, so I know that there's some correlation.
Oh, you got the rabid fan base. You're constantly fighting off women. It's all that. That's the connection.
It is fighting the women. It gets hard.
Yeah,
right. I've had to lock the door just to keep them away.
Mostly men for me. It's something about the beard.
Mike Tonsmeyer, I'm gonna point this question to you because I don't know if you still maintain it, but there for a while you had a poster of the relationships of all the breweries that you could think of, the major breweries, and who owned them and who owned that. So there was this matrix of who owned who as a poster. Breweries getting swallowed up. Now we're seeing breweries, that are unfortunately going away. So is it impossible to update that poster now? and what's your I want to get your sense of, since you've sort of had your finger on the pulse of the industry, how are things going out there?
Sure. We actually just had 20 copies of it show up at the tasting room this morning. We sell them. We have them hanging up over the bathrooms. And so people look at them and it says, hey, $20, whatever. It's a fun sort of conversation starter, I think, for people who come in. I think it helps to put a showcase on those local breweries in Maryland. We've got all of them in the middle, sort of all the independent breweries. But then, hey, I'm also mentioning that Flying Dog is owned by somebody out of state, and Duclaw is no longer brewing here, and Guinness is part of Diageo, and sort of not everyone is as knowledgeable as we are, knowing who is a craft brewer, who really is independent. In terms of changes, though, it really is slowed down. There are very few sales seemingly happening. And the ones that do happen, like Tilray just bought a bunch of the Molson Coors craft brands. So it's more that old craft breweries are being swapped between multinational corporations rather than, I can't honestly remember the last time I saw a Bud Miller Coors Duvel buy a existing craft brewery. there was a report at some point that the CEO of Tilray was getting like a call a day from craft brewers who were, medium, regional, whatever, looking to sell, looking to get out of the industry, looking to retire, and really didn't see a great way to do it with the way the distribution market's been really tough recently. Versus in Maryland, we're seeing sort of those mid-sized distro-focused breweries having trouble. And the smaller ones then sort of opening underneath them are nanos, brew pubs, tasting room focus, doing something small and unique and weird in a neighborhood where they get a lot of foot traffic and that kind of thing, rather than fighting for shelf space with the place making 100-barrel batches that you just can't get beer to market for the price they can.
So there's more of a focus on the niche, people carving out. I guess you guys probably all fit this category of finding your local audience that likes your stuff and concentrating on keeping them happy. Anybody have some feelings on that?
Well, for us, I don't have any need or desire to put my beer in 5 states or 2 states, or even I'm super close to the Minnesota-Wisconsin border. I live in Wisconsin. My brewery's in Minnesota. Even to jump that river, the regulatory hoops you have to jump through, the extra expense, the headaches, it's really not worth it. Even to go into the little towns around where I live, where we're known and we get traffic from people that we know that come up to the brewery. I don't think you can go into beer anymore to get rich. I think there was a time where you could open a brewery and reasonably expect like, oh, we can make this thing big and we can expand and we can distribute. That's not the market that's out there anymore, at least for the people that are doing this because of the beer, which I think we're sort of all in that boat where we do beer because of the beer, not because of the money.
Right. I'm in a similar boat. 10-minute drive away, I can get into Illinois, and that's a whole other. Just to echo what you said, that's whole other distributors. Those are get TTB involved at a different level. It's a whole other thing. We opened this place. It'd be great if Twin Span became this huge epic brewery. I at least went in with my partners assuming that was never going to happen. That the days of the major regional breweries are over. But yeah, I did think we could grow. I think we could be profitable. But I will also say myself and just about every other brewer I know in town has a second job, a day job to fund their passion. Certainly the other brewery owners here in town all have some other source of income and aren't relying entirely on the brewery. Or
you might have a spouse, that has a good insurance plan. I think that happens a lot with other industries as well. You if you're self-employed, you need someone to have an insurance plan to, because you don't get one at first. Matt, you raised your hand.
Yeah. So I don't know if I don't have data on this, but it certainly feels like we're in this sort of, and a lot of you guys it seems like you started kind of at the beginning of the pandemic. And now it seems like there's this post-pandemic slump. And it may be because of that, or it may be because of, beer tastes have changed. Have you guys experienced that slump? And what are you doing to combat it?
Sean?
Yeah. As I mentioned, we had the possibly most unfortunate opening date possible, being 3 days before we were shut down. So we don't really have numbers from before that to compare, but certainly we're seeing the post-pandemic peak slump, if that makes any sense, where the last couple of years were just potentially an unattainable level of business, maybe especially for us being mostly tourist business. And this year we've really been struggling to figure out, if this is going to be more of a baseline, how do we, forge a path forward in this kind of economy?
Yeah, I got solicited questions on Facebook, and I got some email. Jamie Conway, our friend, who is a professional brewer here in Northwest Arkansas, great guy, great brewer, says, homebrewer turned pro, get out while you can. And then Niles from Facebook, John from Facebook says, how can a new brewery hope to succeed when well-established professionals have been forced to close their doors? So Mike, is it all doom and gloom?
No, we're the happy hour crowd has never come back. Even pre-pandemic, we didn't really have beer to go. We didn't have cans. And just selling, draft and growlers at Average Thursday was better then than it is now that we have bottles and cans and all these things. But conversely, our weekends have been out of control. I think a lot of people are in our area telework, and so they're just not at the office to stop at a brewery on their way home. But then on the weekend, they're feeling cooped up, and even if they're half an hour or 45 minutes away, they're getting in their car, they're driving, they're meeting up with friends, and then they're taking home beer because they're still drinking beer on the weekdays. They just are, not drinking it out in the way maybe they used to. Our sales have been up. We've slowly added days. We've added trivia has been really big for us on Tuesdays. We just sort of are slowly trying to pull in people who aren't just beer nerds. We sort of subsisted on that for a while, but untapped check-ins are way down, which I think is at least some sort of indication of the sort of excitement for beer. And I don't know if it's just that, all the good ideas have been done, or that just, hey, there's just great beer everywhere now. And so you're not having to search it out. And when you go to a brew pub or a tasting room, it's a different vibe if you can just get a sample or a half pour or whatever. You don't need to be as intent on figuring out if this beer is good in the same way you would if you were buying a 6-pack or you were spending $30 on a really special bottle from somewhere. You can just walk in, have a taste, and go, wow, that's pretty good. Yeah, I'll take one of those. And if I really like it, maybe I'll get a 4-pack or something like that. So for us, it definitely, it's been sort of a slow upward climb. But that's partly just that we keep adding more beer and more hours and more events and all those sorts of things. It's just been, we're sort of always hustling, and that's just sort of what has helped us so far. And I'm hopeful that keeps going, but it's hard to predict because it is such a cyclical, up and down sort of thing sometimes.
Adam?
Yeah, we've only seen growth, which sounds like a brag, but it's been so small of growth. I mean, we had one year where the barrel production increased by 1.
Wow.
I mean, so we've had very small growth, but there's growth to be had, I think, in the right market, in the right niche. We've never been one of those places that are an untapped hotspot. We are where we're located, right next to a bunch of sports complexes. We're very seasonal as well, as long as there's sporting events. We have the soccer moms and football dads and everybody coming in for that. But yeah, I think if you choose the right market and you have a good product and you have the product people want and you're able to pivot, because it's not like pandemic killed beer sales. They switched to a lot more people drinking from home than drinking out. But if you were able to get cans or crowler fills right out of the gate, you were able to make sales. But yeah, everything's cyclical. I mean, we're all going to be hurting come January because people do this silly thing called dry January. But just in the long-term trends, I think if you're able to pivot, there's growth. I know a few people locally who are starting to talk about THC-infused beverages, stuff like that. So people are still thirsty.
Jesse emailed a whole bunch of questions. Jesse says, thanks for all the great content you've produced for the beer community. I've been listening weekly since 2015. So thanks, Jesse. Jesse's been working on his business plan for a 2-barrel nano brew pub in South Carolina. Jesse's background is culinary. He's been working in the industry since 2012 and have been homebrewing for almost as long. He has a list of 6 questions. We'll try to get to these. First of all, sort of a general, homebrewer going into pro question. Transitioning from homebrewing, what are the biggest learning curves? For me, I'm mostly timid on how all the equipment operates. I'm used to corny kegs, so how different are the mechanics of Sankey kegs? That's pretty specific. And then Lyle from Facebook, the cost of starting up a brewery and also how to scale recipes from 5 gallons to, say, a barrel. Is it as easy as multiplying? So let's stay away from the financial aspect right now, but let's go with it. We haven't heard from you, Josh, in a little bit. What was the biggest going from a home brewer to a professional brewer, mechanics wise, scaling up recipes? Were there any surprises for you?
I don't think there's anything huge. I mean, I find that like the percentages of dark malts on a bigger scale maybe are a little bit different, but I don't think it's as big of a jump as people seem to think it is. My big advice, if you're going this route, was as soon as you go pro, keep everything as simple as you can keep it. If you come right out of the gate and you want to do 5-step mashes and you want to try and do decoction and you want to try and harvest yeast and you're going to get out, like you'll be out over your skis. But if you keep everything simple and add a process at a time, I mean, that's what I'm 2 years in. I've turned, I think I just went over 100 turns on my 5-barrel system. And I learn stuff every time I brew on that thing. I've had a couple collabs with other brewers that have come in, and that's a huge thing too. Talk to other people, talk to people in your neighborhood, talk to other brewers. These guys they're gonna want to talk to you. This industry is great because people are willing to sit down, have a beer, and say, hey, like, I see how you have that hose hooked up to your tank. This is how I do it. Like, and I've learned stuff that way. I could put a valve there and then be able to take this whole section of hose out, sanitized, closed. Never thought about it because as a home brewer, you don't need to worry about it. And stuff that people have picked up from other breweries over the years is huge to then add into your process.
John?
I think, of course, broadly agree. There's always a learning curve. I don't think that scaling up necessarily, at least at the scales we're talking about, I think the largest we're dealing with here is a 15-barrel. If you're a home brewer who's using a pump, who has cylinder conical fermenters, who is familiar with all of sort of the equipment that would be best practices at a small brewery, it's really just scale. And from a recipe standpoint, of course, you're going to have to work around that a little bit. And there are always little things to learn. I recently on our 150-something batch figured out a new way to route my water line while cleaning the kettle that saved me 8 trips up and down the ladder. Which is huge at the end of a brew day.
Mm-hmm.
And also I wanted to specifically talk about the Corny versus Sankey thing because he's talking about a 2-barrel system. If Sankeys are what you know and you're not distributing, maybe just stick with them. They're certainly the advantage to the Sankey is you can take the lid off to visually inspect after cleaning, or just clean manually, depending on how he's planning on serving, whether it's serving tanks or straight out of the Cornies. A Sankey is great because you have that sort of guaranteed sanitation if you're using best practices. There are no sharp edges inside. But that does mean that you have to make sure you have the procedures in place to clean those blinds. Maybe you'll open one up for an inspection every 100 or whatever. But, the concept of manual cleaning, I think, sort of goes away for the most part when you're looking at this sort of scale. Maybe a kind of trivial example being on our 7-barrel tanks, the manways are narrower than my shoulders. So I have to have a very long stick with a scrubby on it to get stubborn spots inside those tanks, and they're 7 feet above my head. Those sorts of things are not maybe obvious, but they're going to be the things that consume most of your time. And I think probably one of my overall takeaways from this conversation is going to be that people should probably go get experience in a brewery. Before just pulling the trigger on buying the stainless.
That reminds me of a conversation that we had with Detlef who's from Nuremberg in Germany. And, he said that in Germany, you have to go through a 5-year apprenticeship and education program in order to become a professional brewer. So, in the United States, if you're a home brewer and you've brewed a couple of Mr. Beer batches, you can go out, if you have enough money, you can go out and buy a brewery. You can you can make a brewery. Doesn't mean you're going to be a good brewer. So finding a way to sort of do an apprenticeship with a local brewery or get hired on the, if you can do it on the, keg cleaning lines or whatever, to get actual in-person, at least seeing the brewing process happen before you actually go out and buy your own stuff.
Find out if you're willing to wash kegs for minimum wage, because if you aren't, you sure aren't going to be willing to do it for free.
Yeah. I'm curious what task a home brewer might find fun, enjoyable, no big deal, that when you scale up to pro brewing, it's an absolute nightmare and you were not expecting it.
I'll let any home brewer practice their grain shoveling to clean out my mash tun if they want to come out. That's my least favorite part of the brew day, at least.
Mike?
Yeah, I guess it's just anything that you're going to have to do that doesn't scale easily. So like we use a lot of local fruit. And as a home brewer, you can chop up 10 pounds of peaches pretty quick. But when you're making a 2-barrel batch and you need 280 pounds of peaches and you've got to go to the farmer's market and get those peaches, then you've got to sort through them and find the ones that need to be held for longer to fully ripen and the ones you need to process. And like when it's fruit season, that's me nights and weekends at home. I'll process fruit and freeze them in my chest freezer and then bring them in. And it's the kind of thing I do because I care to do it. I don't know that I could make one of my employees do that. That's just not a reasonable thing to require someone to do on a Saturday while they're, watching football or whatever, is just start picking through plums and start, but it's the kind of thing that I can do on the weekend that then I can still have my time during the week to do the real production tasks or the real ordering financial stuff that needs to be done.
Let's talk a little bit about scale. Jesse says, he's the one with the 2-barrel business plan. Do you think there's still a market for a nano taproom scenario? I'm not looking to get wealthy. However, I do need to bring home money to help support my family. I've been wanting to have my own business for a long time now. I just want to do what's going to make me happy, not to get rich. And, Jesse has a culinary background as well, and also asks, would you recommend that I hire a brewer or a chef? I can't do both, obviously. He has experience in the cooking, but he kind of wants to get out of the kitchen. But it seems like an obvious answer on that one. Maybe Jesse should stay in the kitchen and hire a brewer and get to know that process rather than stepping out on something that that he doesn't know a lot about. And
I agree 100%.
And do you think that there is still room for a nano brewery out there with a restaurant attached?
I will say there's a nano tap room here in town, a 1-barrel system. They're a bar. They're not a restaurant. They let food come in, and they're doing all right, as far as I know. I don't know anything about, how much anyone's taking home at the end of the day, but they've been open for a number of years, and they're still busy now. They're not just reliant on the beer they make in house. There's other beer and there's other food nearby, but again, I think if at the right market, absolutely you can have a nano.
Josh.
So to me, that's like what you said about not relying on only your beer to be sold is the huge thing if you're going to do a nano. There's places around us that I know where they have a brew pub model, they have their own beer and it's great, but they also supplement that sap line with a bunch of other regional local beers. And that to me is how you're going to make it work. Because I think at 2-barrel, if you have any sort of success, you're going to be pushing hard to make that system work. But if you can have that system be half or 30% of your options, you're covering yourself for when you do get busy and things do get it, and you just can't keep up.
Matt?
I mean, Adam, you mentioned they're doing all right, air quotes, and he had mentioned in the question that he needs to support a family. Is that realistically possible with something like that?
I think there's a economy of scale at play here because it takes just as long to make a 15 barrel batch as it does on my 1 barrel pilot system. I mean, there's a little more transfer time and stuff like that. Um, so I don't know what, I mean, that's too big of a question for me to answer, I think. But um, I would go bigger, and that's part of why we have a 15 barrel system, and we could probably make do with a 5 or a 7, if I'm being honest right now. But um, it's so much easier to build big from the beginning and be ready to scale up for when things do get busy.
And what does big mean? Like, what do you mean? Why does that attribute to earning more?
I mean, if I make 15 barrels of a lager, and it on a 1 barrel system, that'd be 15 brew days or 15 turns rather. For me, it's one 6 to 8 hour brew day. Just from a labor perspective, your cost is so much better on the large scale. So we use our 1 barrel system quite a bit as a pilot, and it's not just pilot for staff because brewhouse staff is just me and a cellarman. It is more of us experimenting and putting those beers out into the market, and we don't brew a new product without it first going through there. So and I learned that the hard way. I have brewed a couple beers that I brewed 7 or 15 barrel batch and thought there's no way this isn't going to be like our best selling beer, and it just did not sell. So, I mean, I think there's those hidden costs too of um, being able to scale. Now, would I want to go right out of the gate with just a 15 barrel and not have a way to test small? No, but on the other side of the coin, it'd be very time intensive and very expensive from labor to just rely on small. And then you get into the other thing I wanted to comment earlier on, scaling up from homebrew. The biggest thing for me was adjusting recipes so that I don't have partial bags lying around. So grain comes in 55-pound bags.
Mhm.
And I had a lot of recipes where I scaled it up, and now it says use 35 pounds of this grain. And no, we're either going to I'll allow half bags sometimes. So we're either going to do 27 pounds or we're going to just go up to 55. When you get down to the nano scale, you're going to have so many open bags just lying around, and inventory management is going to be a mess. And then pest control could be a mess. Making sure those grain bags are kept safe and dry and cool. Yeah, keep it simple if you can.
Yeah, Mike.
When we were looking to open, we were originally thinking of a 5 or a 7, and I talked to a couple of brewers, and sort of the overwhelming advice I got was sort of, if you're looking to do profitability, sort of 10 barrels is kind of where, 7 you can get away with, but much smaller than that. If you're willing to do multiple turns and things like that, you certainly can, but it really just makes it a lot easier to make enough beer with a set amount of staff. I'll say too, though, that I've seen too many breweries, I think, make the next step up to say a 20 barrel with some 40 and some 60 barrel tanks. And that just sucks the momentum out of your sales. You open up and you do a 40 barrel batch of pale ale, and sales aren't going to go that quick, and you're trying to find accounts, and now that beer is getting older and you haven't put anything new on in a couple of weeks, and you only have 4 beers on tap. So whether it's having a pilot system, we do a lot of stuff with like split batches. So we have a little 2-barrel tank where we'll steal a few barrels of wort off of a run and do a different fermentation. Or we have a lot of drinks, so essentially the same idea as a corny keg. You can take the lid off of it and put lemon peel in there, put a different dry hop in there before you dry hop the main batch. And we do a lot of our sort of test batches and sort of one-offs that way. And then as we're talking about, if that's a hit, then it gets scaled up to a bigger batch. But it's about economies of time. And if all your IPAs are sort of the same base, just with different hopping, I'd rather steal a keg of undry hopped IPA and give you a new dry hop rather than through a whole pilot batch of IPA if it's just going to get to that same point and get dry hopped like the other batch would have anyway. So I think being the right scale, that you're turning over taps quickly enough to have, hey, it's a Friday, we're tapping something new. That's a lot more dynamic of a social media post than come try the beers that you didn't drink yesterday or last week or the week before. And for us, just every week we try to be releasing something. Every Thursday we're tapping a variant. Every Friday we're tapping a new big batch. Saturday we're releasing cans or bottles. And so there's sort of a rhythm to the week. And people just sort of know if they come in, there's probably going to be something new and interesting on. And if they like it, great. And if not, hey, it's going to be gone in a couple of weeks and something new will be on.
Yeah, we have something new every Wednesday. And a lot of split stream. So I can just second what Mike was saying there. People want variety, and you're allowed to do that with a larger system.
I would definitely agree with both Adam and Mike that it's really helpful from a customer engagement standpoint to be able to do those kind of one-offs or variations on things. We do it on Thursday where it's once a month. We put out a variation on one of our existing beers. But what I wanted to say was that I think I might actually be a cautionary tale on having gone a little too big, where we would have a lot easier time having more beers and more variety on tap if we had gone with, say, a 5-barrel instead of a 7, especially, and everything's going to be specific to your space, but we have very high ceilings, but we're very limited in floors in square footage. So, there are solutions for things in like 3 and 5 barrels, especially where you can double stack tanks. And we could have gotten, potentially, we have 6 serving tanks and we could have maybe had 10. And that would have been a huge reduction in my workload because cleaning kegs by hand is not really significantly faster than cleaning a 7-barrel tank. I can clean maybe a barrel and a half in kegs in the same time I clean a 7-barrel serving tank. And that comes down to your local market. We didn't know when we opened that we would eventually decide that we just weren't going to distribute at all. And it sounds like that's what he's talking about. So, stainless costs don't scale. A 5-barrel tank is going to cost, let's just say 25% more than a 3 and 25% more than that for a 7. You do get into diminishing returns eventually. But there's that temptation, you look at those numbers when money's tight and you're working on your business plan or getting ready to buy the stainless, and you want to go as big as you can. But maybe there are certainly business models where it's valuable to take a step back from that, I think.
It sounds like the marketing strategy is release a new beer every week. Am I hitting the right area there? Okay, cool.
I think Sapwood Cellars does it like every day, right? Every day is a new beer, right, Mike?
Yeah.
In 6 years, we've put out 950 some odd beers.
So just a small amount. Okay, so what is the promotion? What's the promotional schedule for something like that? How do you keep either the same people or new people coming into the door, assuming that that's your ultimate goal? Like, what does that look like for each of you?
Josh, we haven't heard you from you in a while.
So for us, it's a kind of a constantly moving target. And we're only 2 years in, not quite 2 years. So we're a little bit in the new brewery phase still, where we get a lot of people that come in and say, "Oh, I've never been here before. I didn't know you were here." And when we started out, my partner Mike and I were trying to handle all of our social media, and it got very stale very fast. Then we had our now social media marketing. I don't know what her title is. She does it all, basically. She's the smart one around here. But she took the social media over, and basically Mike and I are too old. We're both in our late 40s. I don't get social media anymore to the degree of what somebody in their 20s does. So she took everything over, has really streamlined everything, has really done the analytics on, you should really post about a new beer at noon on a Thursday versus 10 o'clock on Monday morning. So it's really helped drive new people in to the tap room, just having somebody that really understands that world.
Is it all social media, or like just Instagram or just TikTok or something like that?
No, we kind of do everything. It's mainly Instagram. a little bit of TikTok, and then kind of the Instagram stuff sort of ports over to Facebook. Or
is social media the move, like, for everyone?
It's the cheapest. It's the most bang for your buck, I think.
Okay.
You know your audience. There's why focus on TikTok if the majority of your customers are 40, 50 plus.
Yeah, Facebook, Instagram.
Yeah, it's not stereotypes. It's there's demographic data out there.
Yeah.
Sidebar, I for a year I paid for the Untapped analytics, and that's a whole different demographic too. That at least around here, that is a certain age group, certain genders, certain income. So know your audience and cater to the audience. I don't put a ton of focus into trying to keep the Untapped scores up because of it's different than our core audience. Likewise, we don't do anything with TikTok, but we're heavy on Facebook and Insta because that's where our customers tend to be.
And Mike, you do your social media, don't you?
Yeah, one of the things I'm real big on is email list. It's old fashioned, but it cuts through that algorithm thing. It seems like no matter how many additional followers we get on Facebook and Instagram, it ends up showing the post to fewer people. And just, sometimes you get something on Reels that pops off and gets 300,000 views or whatever. But honestly, I don't know how many of those people live anywhere near us, or if it actually is driving any sort of sales to the tasting room versus just send that email that, people get every Friday with what the new beers are and some photos of the staff and the upcoming events and join the book club. And
you're doing all that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I now do very little of the actual production brewing. We have a head brewer, Ken, who does a fantastic job, and two guys under him. Mm-hmm. I still do most of the recipe writing, the ingredient ordering, the copy for the labels. But, sort of, I do the taxes, but social media is one of the things I can do nights and weekends. And again, I kind of feel bad putting something like that on an employee and saying, hey, you should be checking the main email at, 7 a.m. on Saturdays and 10 p.m. on Sundays. But in the same breath, we want to get people a quick response if they say, hey, I'd love to rent out the back room on, Friday. You don't want that sort of languishing somewhere, because they probably sent 5 of those emails out. And if you get back to them quickly, even if it's hey, we'll let you know tomorrow, and then, copying the person who handles it. That's the kind of stuff that sort of I've taken on, and it's at some point I will have to give a bunch of that stuff up. But whoever was saying it, I think there's something to be said for I think I'm our target consumer, and so my vibe on the social media is probably going to resonate hopefully more with 40-year-old guys who like beer and live around here. That might not resonate with hiring. One of my friends was like, you guys, you need a Gen Z to do the social media or whatever. I just don't know where we are. We would have a lot of Gen Z customers, or if we just get a lot of likes from people who then wouldn't actually come in. Mm-hmm. And that's something, honestly, I'm sure I could do better on the analytics and stuff like that. But I like the authenticity of I'm taking photos of production, just not the finished beer. It's not just that. Here's the finished beer. Here's somebody adding the coffee beans into, the coffee stout, which is something I think sometimes you don't get when you just have someone who once a week comes in, takes photos of the finished beer, writes some copy for them. But I've also been to breweries that have a fantastic, brewer who does 25% of their time in social media. So they're there in production situations with the camera, taking the shots. They're making sure, somebody's getting a collaboration group photo, whatever, which sometimes I forget until somebody's walked out the door. I go, okay, well that's missed that one.
And Sean, since you're in a tourist town and you get a lot of out of towners just coming through, does that change your relationship with social media and that marketing platform?
I suspect it does, and I will absolutely cop to the fact that I'm really bad at social media. We're actually in the process of hiring someone to take over that because I just have no interest in it. I signed up for Facebook to do this Zoom call. So we actually pay to advertise in the sort of traditional sort of tourist guides. the Welcome to Lake County thing that you pick up for free at the grocery store. People who maybe weren't even thinking about visiting a brewery, but then they see, oh, well, it's America's highest brewery, we should buy a t-shirt. Where a lot of them don't have a beer, but they want those t-shirts. Yeah. So it's very, I guess the original question was coming from South Carolina, and I don't know the exact area, but it's all going to come down to know your market. If you're in a major city, social media is going to be king. Obviously, that's never going away. But you have to engage with your customers, whether they're locals or not, where they are.
When it comes to promotion and getting people into the brewery, is there anything that, even when it comes to scale, are there things that you track on a daily, weekly, monthly basis that give you what we call KPIs, right? Your key performance indicators of we're doing well and we're doing better than we did either the month before or the year before. What are those things that you guys track that maybe most people wouldn't think you would?
Adam?
Yeah, me and my two partners we're data guys, we're IT guys. So we think about this stuff all the time, for better or worse. And a lot of it's through our sales system. So our point of sale system offers reporting. I'm running for our staff, not just for my partners, but for our staff. I'm running a weekly report that shows, which beers perform the best, which foods perform the best. And here's the ones that aren't performing as well. And let's maybe give those a little extra push out in the tap room. And that POS system, and I'm not naming it, it's a really popular one. I can name it, but if anyone's interested, but it sends you regular reports too that show you how did you compare today versus this time last year or this time last week. It's really just it's a numbers game, and we are using I don't know if it's anything that you wouldn't think to look at. I can certainly look at the numbers, and I know that there was a tournament nearby last weekend because we sold a ton of cheeseburgers. And I know the Little League teams, they love cheeseburgers. And then our beers didn't sell as well because our dining room was then full of 12-year-olds. So there are trends, but largely we're a business looking to sell more beer. So we use sales as our KPIs.
Josh, how granular do you get?
We're not super granular yet. It's sort of something we've been pushing more into. So at least Mike and I will sit down once a week and, we have our sales targets for the days. We kind of know, okay, we're pretty close to a couple concert venues. So we know Pink was in town last weekend. So what are we going to see from Pink? How do we maybe focus and add a social media ad towards more of that demographic to catch the people that are in town, just from out of town, the visitors. So it's all stuff that we're constantly trying to sort of determine what the real KPI stuff needs to be for us.
Mike?
I just really look at sort of like long-term trends. I tend not to worry. Just sometimes there's another event going on or there's a big beer fest somewhere and our sales take a dip that day. But stuff like that, I just don't know that there's much I can do about it. And so I tend to be more interested in how was September this year compared to September last year. And hey, once we had Tuesdays, was that taking away sales from Wednesday and Thursday? Were people splitting up when they were going to come, or are they adding on Tuesdays? That kind of thing. So it's more for me like a limited scope dive into something to see, hey, how's that last? For a while, we were really struggling towards the end of the day on Sundays. And so we decided to do our one happy hour for the week is the last 2 hours of Sunday from 5 to 7 p.m. And that's really helped. And so, I kind of kept an eye on that for a couple of weeks. And it seemed like rather than doing $100 between 6 and 7, we're doing $700 or where. Great. That paid for itself, and it didn't seem to be coming at the expense of earlier in the day on Sunday, or it wasn't shifting a lot of people from Saturday to Sunday. Sort of the other times stayed roughly similar. And so, hey, I was happy to see sales go up, and that's worth it. Now we've got something to sort of push on Sundays, get people to come back after they came for the release on Saturday kind of thing.
Sean?
We, our point of sale, I guess, are we doing brand names?
Well,
Town Square.
it's up to you.
Extremely easy and straightforward for the sort of business we're running. We could do slightly better on credit card fees with something a little more involved, but for a single location business, it does just fine for us. And of course, any point of sale at this point that's worth considering is going to give you those sort of data tracking things. But because of that, we know, for example, that 93% of our customers never return. And I choose to believe that that is not a reflection on us. It's just that we are a stop on their vacation, not a destination in itself. So we are in maybe not a unique position, but probably different from the other guys we're talking to here who are in more urbanized areas and trying to attract that local demographic. So that's, I feel like I'm probably the least qualified on that one.
I mean, I'd be curious, Sean, if you look at your website traffic, because our beer menus are all digital, and so I'll use that as well. Especially since we're on an interstate, people will stop in and they'll look at our menu, and it will still show where they're from. So, I'd be curious with tourist destination what that kind of data looks like. I mean, we'll get it all over the place because we're in the middle of the Midwest in I-80.
With the exception of a pretty good hotspot in Denver, it's a heat map of human population,
Okay.
not even nationally, but worldwide.
Wow. Okay. Interesting.
So we're coming up in an hour, and you guys are busy running actual breweries. So we probably should round it out. I know we could talk for another hour, but I'm not sure that you want to. But and I'm take the opportunity to say I'm honored and grateful that you guys have taken time out to talk with us. If you could go back to when you were deciding to go pro, and if you could tell yourself back then, home brewer self who wants to go pro, if you could tell yourself anything, what's the best nugget of wisdom that you could tell yourself? Who wants to go?
I'll go.
Go, Josh.
I would say go out to your local breweries that you really respect. If you have to shoot them an email and say, hey, I'm thinking about doing this, can I come pick your brain? I guarantee 90% of them are going to say, yeah, swing into the tap room. We'll have a beer, go over it. The biggest thing about opening a brewery is all of the stuff that's not beer. Like, it's the business stuff, it's the social media stuff, it's the taxes, it's the regulations, it's all the stuff that as a home brewer you have no real avenue to get to know until you start it, and then you get into the TTB stuff and you get into, do I want to open a brew pub? Do I want to open a brewery? Do I want to open a cidery? All of the stuff that the pros have already been through it. They know it. They can give you the kind of roadmap to here's the big hurdles that I got. Because if you're making beer at home at a level where you really think this is an option for you, the beer's not going to be that hard on the pro side. It's all of the other stuff. It's graphic design. Luckily for me, my whole career was graphic design, so I can do all that. But to hire a graphic designer and an illustrator, to hire an accountant, to hire a tax guy, that's the stuff that the pro brewers are going to be able to fill you in on over a couple pints of their beer.
Adam, you're nodding your head.
Yeah. If you just want to geek out on beer and share beer with people, I would encourage you to continue being a home brewer and not co-pro, because you'll have that flexibility. You won't have shareholders. You won't have beer that you have to dump because you thought it was a great idea and it just isn't selling. If you want to open a business, if you want to run a business, if you want to be challenged and learn new stuff every day, then absolutely. I homebrewed for 14 years before I went pro, and I went pro somewhat begrudgingly. I kind of got dragged into it, but I don't regret it at all. It's just brewing is such a small part of running a brewery, and that's the part that's really attractive. But I kind of knew that going into it too. So if I had to tell myself when I opened, I would say I think what Sean recommended there. More tanks, smaller tanks, because it's going to save you so much time, and cleaning kegs is not fun. Sipping tanks is a lot easier. Um, so many people warned me, hey, go bigger than you expect, have a bigger floor space than you expect. And I was like, yeah, great idea. And then within a year, we were like, oh no, we don't have anywhere to put the stuff we want to put. So just the logistical things that we didn't really know going in, because probably would have helped going to other pro brewers and talking to other pro brewers. And we did a little bit, but just those little logistical, hey, this will save you time considerations. I'd give Adam from 5 years ago a little bit of a heads up on those.
Mike?
Maybe it's just a weird specific thing to me. I was just so in the habit when I was a home brewer of sitting down with my beer. And since I wrote the blog, I would write up tasting notes on each batch and have my little note on maybe what I would change next time. And when we were starting out, that just sort of fell by the wayside. And part of that was that we were pretty much draft only. So I would either have to remember to fill up a growler and take it home, or I'd have to, find a spot to sit down by myself and not get bothered. And honestly, you're just like starting out, you're thinking so much about each of these batches. It's you and I had Scott and our GM Spencer is a home brewer, and we talk about things, but we just weren't great at like recording that stuff. And then once COVID hit and we started canning, I now take every batch home. I sit there with it. I drink it. If it's a Citra double IPA, I try to get one from another local brewery or a cool brewery that, happened to, somebody sent some beer from them or whatever, and really try to put them next to each other and think to myself, do I like mine better? What do I like about it better? Am I always finding my beers are a little bit more astringent? And that's the kind of stuff that's really helped to improve our beer over time. And it also, for me, is just like connecting with the beer, which is the reason that we all got into this thing. And actually sitting there and appreciating it and enjoying it and thinking about it critically is one of the things I love about beer. And now I don't get to pull the valves and actually have the physical tactile thing other than some barrel transfers or some variants or whatever. But really making sure I'm still connecting with the beer, that I'm revisiting beers after they've been on for a couple of weeks to make sure they're still tasting good, to make sure, hey, all the cans aren't, looking like they did before. To really not lose because it is so easy to get distracted by hiring and taxes and finances and analytics, but that, the beer should be something that still takes up a big chunk of your thoughts, and your actions are sort of all based on what are the results. Can I cut back ingredients and save money and boost yield, or am I really losing something? All those things really go into it.
Sean, we'll finish with you. Your final thoughts, since this was your idea.
Brew an IPA. We launched without one, and that was probably the biggest single mistake as far as the launch goes. Well, other than, not being able to time travel and tell myself wait a year to open. But yeah, the customer is always right. It's kind of a cliche, but at the end of the day, you have to sell the product. So you need to meet the customers where they are. You might love your expertly crafted Vienna lager that you've been homebrewing and tweaking for a decade, but if it doesn't sell, you're not going to keep the doors open. So be more flexible than I have been, I guess, is the takeaway I would give.
Well, Matt Giovanisi, I don't want to leave you out. This has been a really fun and useful conversation to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Hearing from everybody and feeling like everything I had come into this conversation with my preconceived notions, like they were met. And I'm glad that a lot of it has to do, it sounds like a lot of it has to do with focus on making the product as best as humanly possible, because that's all that matters at the end of the day. That's the best marketing. And it sounds like too, for being a home brewer, and especially with my insane setup, it doesn't sound like it's all that hard to scale up even to, a small brewery. So that's kind of encouraging in case one day I may want to, or begrudgingly getting into it like Adam did.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this has been a lot of fun. Matt Giovanisi from Brew Cabin, Josh Secor from Gambit Brewing Company, Sean Terrell from 2 Mile Brewing Company, Mike Tonsmeyer from Sapwood Cellars, and Adam Ross from Twin Span. I got them all! My brain didn't sketch out on me. All right. Thanks, guys, so much.
Thanks, James.
Thanks,
Thanks,
James.
James.
Thanks.
Many thanks to everybody who took part and to all y'all who submitted questions. It's a different world from just a few years ago, but I still think there's room for talented folks who can carve a niche with delicious beers. And if you'll notice, I tried to go from west to east, but it turns out that Josh Secor is more westerly than Adam Ross. So, that's my high school geography going south on me, so to speak. If you have brewing questions, show suggestions, or just want to say howdy, write to james@basicbrewing.com or just fill out the contact form at basicbrewing.com. And please don't forget to tell us where you're from. Check out our mobile-friendly shop at basicbrewingshop.com. Thanks to everybody supporting us through our Patreon page. Special goodies coming your way. Check that out at patreon.com/basicbrewing. It's all until next time. Till then, thanks for listening, everybody. I'm James Spencer. Production help for Basic Brewing Radio and our website is provided by Kelly Dodson. Basic Brewing Radio is a production of Active Voicing. We'll talk to you next time, everybody. In the meantime, stay well and stay tuned. So long.